Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Dream Makers podcast. This is the convergence of faith, family, finance, and business. You're going to find different ways that you can look at your life, change it, impact it, hopefully improve it. That's what this is all about. This is about chasing dreams and finding ways that we can be dream makers. And today we have a very special guest. I'm super excited and super thankful for his time to be with us today. This is Steve Huff. He is an author, but I'm not going to get into too much about him. I'm going to have him introduce himself, and then we'll get right into the conversation.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Huff, and I am an author. Prior to that, I kind of started my whole life in North Carolina, where I'm originally from. And then around 2000, I moved to Australia, and I started working in software companies. And I call myself a recovering tech entrepreneur because I've been involved in probably a dozen startup technology companies over my career, and it's been quite a journey. And through that, I've traveled quite a bit. I've met some really interesting people. I also tend to work in companies that have a social entrepreneurial focus, and so I've done everything from solar lighting and refugee camps in Africa to parenting websites to working with providing education to youth to prevent drug overdose in America. So there's kind of been an interesting career there. But 2 years ago, my wife and I decided to leave Australia and do some traveling, and we became digital nomads and started traveling around Europe, which was incredibly exciting and enlightening, and what a gift and a journey that was. And we were there one day, and I was working in a business and with some folks in the States, and it fell apart. And I started questioning a lot of things about myself, my faith, what I was doing, why I was doing it. And at that point, my wife, who had been encouraged me to write some stories for years, said, "Why don't you write it down?" And once I started writing it, it just didn't stop. And in September, I published my first book called "Life is Chaos and All is Well." So it's been a great journey. So Brendan, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, we're very excited, and I did have the opportunity to get a copy of the book. I'm hoping that after this conversation, I'll be able to get you to send me a signed copy.
Absolutely.
But I read the book, and I mean, there's just so much in this book to digest to help the reader understand that, just life happens, and it's not always something. It's not always your fault, and it's not always there's not always something that you can do about it. And so, really, kind of the convergence of all the content in this book is just allowing life to happen, but being yourself while life is happening. Being that authentic person, that authentic leader. And I really was hoping that we could get you to talk about, where that came from, and what led you to write about that specific content in this book.
Well, that's a great question, Brandon. So the book's divided into two kind of parts. The first part is all about the chaos we experience in life. So that could be, grief or trauma or conflict or anger or toxic people, all this kind of wild, wacky stuff that we all have to deal with as humans in going in our journey, whether we have families or whether we don't, or whether we're at work. And so there's a lot of chaos in our lives. But the other part of the book is, how do I live my best life? How do I live into what I talk about as the all is well? And trying to balance that, because in the midst of all of our chaos, we also have to recognize that it's okay and we're okay. And so when we talk about this concept of authenticity, that's something I've been thinking about and reading about and talking with people for years. And when I ask leaders, I work with a lot of leaders now doing some consulting and working with them in business and strategic planning and executive coaching. And one of the things I ask leaders is, what does authenticity mean to you? And often I get, a very similar response. It's when your actions and your values are congruent. And I love that. That's so true. Um, we have an opportunity in our lives to choose to kind of walk the talk. And I think that's what we're really called to do, is to make sure that when we're saying something, we're actually doing it. And so that concept of authenticity is really important. And in my own life, I struggle. Sometimes I'm not authentic. Sometimes I'm not congruent. And I think we all, if we're honest with ourselves, have had times when that happens. But I wanted to try to figure that out. So what I started to do was think about that whole idea of walking the talk, and what are the key things that we do in our relationships or at work that make that happen. And the first thing we do, if we want to be authentic, is we have to get to a point where we trust people and they trust us. And we build that trust in our relationships through listening, through supporting, through holding up one another, through having each other's back and being there for each other. But the other thing we have to do, if we're being authentic with each other, is we have to challenge. We have to hold up the mirror to one another. We have to give feedback. We have to, because, we don't see it all. My wife is my best friend, but she's also the person that knows me better sometimes than I know myself, and points out those things that I do that not only can frustrate her, but other people. And, I'm a smart guy, I think, and I'm well read and I'm traveled, but I don't know everything and I don't see it all. So having someone there to give me that feedback is critical. So that's the first part of the model, is supporting and confronting one another. And when you think about it, that's what we try to do in our lives. We try to um, learn about those things. We try to develop ourselves as humans. So we read books, we listen to podcasts, we engage in conversations, we study. And that's a developmental process where we learn and develop as humans. And I believe the fundamental things that we do in relationship, if we're authentic, are to support and challenge one another. But then there's a third thing that I think we often overlook, and that's the piece of letting go. That's the piece of surrendering and forgiving. And letting go really means that you take on a view that I'm responsible to the people in my life, and to love them, to support them, and to challenge them, but I'm not responsible for the people in my life. They have to go on that journey and be responsible for themselves. So letting go of that notion is very important.
Absolutely. And I wonder if what are some tips that you would have for people, or maybe some ideas that you'd have for people that maybe are struggling with keeping themselves accountable as far as
Mm,
being authentic, and that
mm.
authenticity that can really revolutionize the way that you live your life and the way that you impact other people's lives?
Well, that's a great question. And for me, I've thought about this a lot, and I think we really have to look at what our strength is. Some of us are really good at encouraging other people and holding other people up and listening and providing that kind of love and support. And for some of us, that's a little bit harder. We might be a little more reserved. We might see the world a little more critically. And so we might be better at the holding up the mirror to someone and giving feedback and challenging people. So I think the first thing you have to do is recognize, well, what are your strengths? Are you more of a kind of support person or more of a challenge person? And there's no right or wrong on that. It's just who we are. But the opportunity is to develop some skills and knowledge and experiences in the other camp. So if I'm really good at supporting and providing that, holding people up and listening, then I may need to work on my critique, because if I'm in an honest relationship with the people that I love, I can't just do one or the other. I can't just be someone who comes in and critiques all the time and challenges and gives feedback unless I do the support first. And if I'm a supportive person and just support without the critique, then it's not authentic either. So I think that the really important thing is that we figure out what our strengths and weaknesses are. The other thing, and I've already mentioned this, is have someone around you, have a person that you trust who does have your back, who's willing to give you some feedback, who's willing to pull you up when you're being a doofus. And I can do that. So that's really important, is to have someone in your life. So first of all, figure out what your strengths are. Next, have someone in your life, and then do your own study, do your own reading. Look at ways you can set goals to improve the way that you act with integrity, when you integrate, or authenticity, when you make your life congruent with what you say and what you do. The last piece, I don't know, the letting go. This is, I mean, it's the heart of a lot of what we think and we study, and ultimately it's about forgiveness. Um, you know, my wife, who I rely on quite a bit, I've mentioned her a couple times already, but one of the things that Jackie has taught me is that it's okay to love myself. It's okay to forgive myself. And that's a hard journey sometimes to go on. And it takes a lot of work. So I would challenge you, if you really want to look at being authentic, get to a point where you accept and love and forgive yourself, because that then allows you to accept and love and forgive others. And I think that's critical.
Wow. Well, that's powerful. And I think that along those same lines, if you have those people in your lives that you or that can speak into your life, or that can talk to you and kind of help you navigate those different things that you're going through, and those different things maybe that you're struggling with, having those people in place that can speak into your life, but not just give you the pat on the back and the attaboys, but that that be allow them to be critical sometimes, in love, because we need those different critical moments where people can say, hey, look, maybe you approach this wrong, and maybe you could consider, if this were to happen again, maybe you could talk different, maybe your tone could be different, maybe. And so we
Sure.
should always be trying to find ways personally that we can grow and that we can better ourselves. And having that person, someone in your life, for you it's your wife, for me it's my wife. I mean, I'm telling you, my wife.
They're
Yes,
great, aren't
sir.
they?
But having those people and friends and contacts and people that can really help
Sure.
you be your authentic self. If I could,
Mm.
I could count on, I probably wouldn't be able to count on both of my hands the amount of times that I've had those, and I'm being transparent, those different conversations with my wife, and she'll tell me, look, you have a lot of dreams, you have a lot of passion, and there's these different things that you're trying to do 1,000 things at the same time, and
Mm.
you should focus on one,
Mm-hmm.
accomplish it, you know,
Sure.
allow it to happen, and see if it grows, and then do. But I just, I'm one of those people where I get these ideas and I want to make them happen now. But my wife has
Yeah.
helped me be a more patient guy. Just
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
having her in my life, being able to speak to me, and it's not just about that. It's about finances. It's about the way that we raise our family, and it's all
Yeah.
these other different things that we do together. We're a team, and having somebody in your life, whether it's your wife or a friend or a colleague, and I think that that's important. And I really appreciate this. Really, all the content in the book was just powerful. Just
Well,
you read it and you think, why didn't I think of this?
Well,
And
thank you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the compliment. You're tagging something here about relationship, and I think this is really critical. During this time when Jackie and I were traveling and this business fell apart, it was really difficult for me because I was close friends with these people. We had eaten dinner at each other's homes. Their family was involved in the business. I was involved in the business. And when it fell apart, it didn't happen in a way that I had ever experienced. I've done a lot of business deals around the world, and I'm pretty hard nosed when I need to be. And but this was a really different experience for me. They basically ghosted us and cut off all contact, and we don't know why. And so we've never been able to resolve that. We've never been able to understand what happened. And so there was a tremendous amount of stress for both Jackie and myself, and it brought up a lot of our stuff. You know how what happens when you're in crappy stuff, the crappy
yeah,
stuff sort of bubbles up in your life. And
sure.
that really happened. And that was a real struggle for us. But one of the things that we did, and I think it was, we heard a podcast with Brene Brown, and she was talking about this. And it was, she does this with her husband when she's really, really low and only had 4 or 5%, he would check in and say, "Where are you?" And she goes like, "I'm 4%." And he's like, "Well, I'm at 90%. I got your back." And vice versa. And Jackie and I started doing with that. And some days we were both at 5%. And so at that point we said, okay, we don't have anything in the tank. We're both at 5%. So what we're going to choose to do is just be kind to one another. And that was a huge shift in the way we had talked about our relationship before and the way we supported each other, and we were there for each other during that struggle. And it was such a wonderful thing. So I think that just tagging on to what you said about how important our relationships are to help us be the authentic person that we can be. Have someone who loves you and supports you and have your back, but also can challenge you and hold up the mirror. It's really a cool thing.
Yes, sir. So when you've dealt with all the different, kind of notes or pinpoints or check
Hmm.
boxes down through the list, and you get down to the very end, and you try and ask yourself, is there a way for us, or for me personally, um, to be better? And you talked about reading books and doing your own study, but for you personally, what are some different things that you've done to approach
Mm.
that process?
It's a wild thing. I kind of grew up in a house that when you looked at things like meditation, which is, you can call it prayer if you like, meditation, prayer, whatever works, or kind of journaling. It was sort of, oh, that's sort of new age stuff. That must be nice for them, but we don't need that. And so it was kind of an interesting thing coming to that in my adulthood, because I had a lot of preconceived notions about it. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to sit there and meditate. I mean, come on, I'm not some Buddhist. I'm just a dude, right? And so, not that there's anything wrong with being a Buddhist, but that was the judgment that I had from my childhood,
Yeah.
that was kind of a part of my family. And so coming to this as an adult was really interesting. And it's been a great journey of discovery for me, because it, just like anything, when I studied hard in school, when I did eventually study hard in school and I did well at that, and in my work career, working in software companies, when I've worked hard and I've been intentional, I've kicked goals, I've been successful, I've done it. And so I know how to apply myself, but I never thought of applying myself to myself. I always thought of applying myself to others, the relationships I had, to the work I had, to the community, the church, the business. But never going back and saying, wait a second, how do I take that energy and improve myself? So that was the first shift for me, Brendan, was to actually think, how do I do this? And going to some basic practices like meditation and breathing, and doing that every morning, just a little breath work, just to kind of relax and get going before the day, and journaling at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, 5 minutes, just some. And there's so many cool journals and different things out there that you can use. We're about to release a journal as a companion to the book, but that kind of discipline has been really important to me, is to work on myself. And so I think that's, to answer your question, those developing practices around things like meditation and journaling, and then looking at intentionally, what are my actions? So one of the chapters in the book is called gratitude. And this is a big topic now. And as we're living our best lives and we're trying to live into the all as well, gratitude is really critical, because it shifts the script on us and helps us be grateful and thankful for the other people and the things in our life, rather than just sort of going through and thinking, well, I deserve that, or yeah, of course, or whatever. It's taking time to stop. So the other thing with meditation and journaling is actions. And how do I show gratitude? And so one of the things I do in there is a 24-hour challenge of seeing how many things you can be grateful for in a 24-hour period, and how many people do you need to thank in your life and show gratitude towards. So it's little things like that: reflecting, breathing, centering, and then action around a specific thing that you want to develop in is crucial, beyond just reading and listening to podcasts and learning and getting the cognitive side.
Absolutely. So we just entered into a new year, and a lot of people, and I just kind of want your opinion or maybe your thoughts on this.
Sure.
And this is just something I've been thinking about. People, and it's probably because I heard this ad on, I don't remember if it was on the radio or what it was, but uh, the ad said, if you've made your New Year's resolutions, don't worry. Um, the second Friday of the year is Quitter's Day, and you can just quit on Quitter's Day. And I mean, it's true though. You think about when people make New Year's resolutions, it's just, I mean, more often than not, by February, all those have gone away, and they're just
Sure.
living, their past life. And they made these sort of resolutions because they wanted to better themselves, whether it's be better people, whether it's just, be more fit or more healthy, or make more connections, or, to grow spiritually or financially, whatever their,
Sure.
those resolutions were. I wonder what would happen if, instead of making them resolutions, we made them goals.
Yeah, I love that. This is such a cool thing that you're talking about, because yesterday, a very close friend of mine and a leader that I admire tremendously, his name is Ash Davis. He posted a post talking about the difference between the New Year's resolution and setting goals. And one of the things he said was that the resolution is kind of like your vision, your roadmap, your aspiration, where you want to be. But the goals are the actual things that help us get there. Those are the baby steps. Those are specific, they're relevant, they're timely. Those are the things that we can do and that help us reach that resolution, that vision, or that aspiration. And I really love that distinction. And I think you've nailed it. When in the book, one of the things I talk about is how to plan, problem solve, and make decisions. And I'm a huge fan of Pareto, the 80-20 rule. It's that classic where you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time, or 20% of carpet in a room gets 80% of the wear. 20% of our profits come from, or 80% of our profits come from 20% of our customers, that kind of thing. And it's not exactly 80-20 anymore. But it's, you get the idea. And one of the things I've done is I've applied that principle to setting goals and planning. And, the first thing you have to know when you set a goal is where we are, or first of all, why? Why are we doing this? Is this really important to us? And then you need to know where you are. What's our current situation? Then you need to figure out where you're going and clearly define it. And then you can brainstorm the things. And oftentimes in goal setting, here's one of the reasons I think it fails as well, is we don't take the time to really wrestle with why are we doing this? Where is it we want to end up specifically? And then brainstorm the ways of getting there. We go right into brainstorming. Oh, I got to get fit. Okay, I'm going to start doing push-ups. Okay, well, why am I getting fit? What is it that I need to do? Why am I setting this as a goal? Then what is it going to look like when we're finished? Do I want to lose some weight? Do I just want to look buff? What's the deal? And so we set that goal, and then we can brainstorm. Okay, well, in order to reach that goal of losing a little weight, I can do some push-ups and build my core or whatever it is, but you're specific. And so I really like that. I like that distinction between resolution and goals.
So one last thing before we get into where they can purchase your book.
Sure.
I wonder if you have any advice for people. Now, I've been in management almost my whole career, managing people, managing businesses, making new contacts and new connections and things like that. But in, and I think anywhere you'll find that it's just like there's almost nonstop fires. And your book, you talk about chaos. Life is chaos. Business is chaos. I mean, everything is chaos. There's always fires, metaphorically, that need to be put out. Maybe sometimes literally, but metaphorically, there's always fires that we've got to put out, that we've got to attack and approach in different ways, and we've got to find different ways to problem solve. What would your advice be to anybody who feels like they're just constantly putting fires out? They don't feel like they're getting anywhere, and they feel like it's just a struggle after struggle after struggle.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and this is a great example. I actually tell the story in my book about my brother Dan, who had a scholarship in North Carolina called a Teachings Fellow, which means he had 4 years at university paid, but then he had to go and teach in a North Carolina public school for 4 years. It's a great program to get great teachers in schools. And he came out of college and university. He was all excited. He was, kind of wide-eyed and ready to rock and roll. He was going to change curriculum. He's going to change these kids' lives. And he's a biology teacher. And he got there, and after his first semester, he came back, and we had Christmas break, and he came home, and he was kind of complaining about how difficult it was, and that other teachers were apathetic. The parents didn't show up to parent-teacher conferences. The students wouldn't do their assignments, and he was kind of going on and on and on. And these are real problems to him, but we kind of laughed a little bit at first because we're like, well, yeah, welcome to the real world, buddy. This is the way it works, But after a while, I think it was my older brother, Dave, said to him, Dan, look, we love you, buddy, but shut up, man. Just give it a rest. And he asked Daniel a really interesting question. He said, where's your power? And Daniel was a very smart guy, much smarter than me. And he thought about this, and he thought, you know what? My power is in my classroom. So what he did was he started to focus on where his power was, and it was in his classroom. He rewrote the curriculum to include environmental education. He found one teacher, the ag science teacher, who wanted to collaborate. So they started taking their classes together out to these farms and doing soil and water, environmental education or environmental studies, biology, ag science, all kind of combined. At the end of the year, those two courses were the most popular electives at the high school. He went and got his bus driver's license so he wouldn't have to reserve a bus driver every time he wanted to take his kids out on a field trip. He put in a new budget to get some waders and nets and all these microscopes and stuff. And he got, $1,500 to buy equipment. And other teachers are like, how'd you get all that extra money and all that stuff? He goes, I asked for it. And they're like, well, how come you get permission to go on all these field trips? And he's like, well, I don't ask. It's my classroom. You know, he sent a new curriculum into the principal, and the principal improved it. He started collecting the computers in the school that were just sitting around, and he didn't know how to use them. He got a guy from town to help write some computer programs. So the kids were crunching the data that they were collecting in the field. Now, after his first year teaching, he was Creative Teacher of the Year. And the second year teaching, he was one of the Teachers of the Year for the state. Now, what changed with Dan? All those problems were still there. There was lack of funding. There was lack of resources. They had apathy, all those things. But what changed is Daniel focused on where his power was, which was in his classroom. We all have choices when we're in chaos. And the chaos just doesn't go away because we wish it will. But we still have choices. And these are powerful choices. The first choice is we can just try to live with it. We can just say, you know what? I'm just going to ride this out. I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm going to live with it. Now, Daniel couldn't live with it because it was just eating him up. So the next choice we have is working the problem. How do we work it? How do we make it better? Now, remember, when you work a problem, you can only work it from where your power base is, which may be small. But what happens when you do that, your power will grow and your influence will grow. And that's what happened to my brother, Dan. Now, your last choice, and he was ready to work it, and so he did. Your last choice is to leave. Now, this is a powerful choice. Now, some of us don't have an option to leave our job. And I get it. You can't just say, oh, I don't like it here, and I've tried to work the problem. I'm just going to leave. That's not realistic. But what you can do is look at each situation you're dealing with and work this process with them. Can I live with this? Can I work the problem, or can I leave? And I think this is really what we have to do is all of these chaotic things in our life, all of the stuff that comes at us from different directions. Take a breath and think about where our power is and what choices we have. Because when we complain and we moan and whinge, and then we're giving away our power. When we're blaming other people, well, it's not my fault, it's their fault, then we're giving away our power. And we'll never get out of that chaos. So I think, to answer your question, the most powerful thing that I've learned in my life, and I try to practice, are those powerful choices. And I think that's what we have to do when we're facing the chaos.
Absolutely, that was very well said, and I definitely appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
I want to get you some, some traffic and some
Sure.
book sales. So,
well, here I'll go ahead and hold this up. Here's the book. It's Life is Chaos and All is Well by Steve Huff, and you can just order it right off of Amazon. Just put it in Amazon, and then you can order it there. If it's also can be available at your independent bookstores. If they don't have it, then you can ask them to look for it and they can order it. But check it out. Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.